Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Collin.
All right, thank you, Christina. Good evening, my name is Collin Bronson, and thank you for coming. I didn't know if it was going to be Christina and I and no one else, or standing room only, but I guess we're somewhere in the middle. So again, thanks for coming. So this is about the South Harbor Construction Project. That's me, Special Projects Director, and my special project is this big construction project. So this has been in the works for about 2 years now. I think in some version or another, it's been discussed and planned probably over the last decade. I'll get into a little bit of history on the project or the South Harbor. And really, when we're talking about the South Harbor, we're talking about the westward expansion from, this is G-Flow right here. So it's everything to the west of G-Flow. This is the original, well, somewhat original harbor, the new old harbor, old new harbor. Anyway, so we're not talking about this, although there are plans and designs and ideas about changing this a little bit, mostly on the land side. But for tonight, my project is mostly all floating, although there is some stuff on Nickoloff Way. So South Harbor, that's South Harbor. And to the casual observer, I don't think you'd notice much. You know, if you had the Google Earth view of this thing, in 2 years, you'd say, it looks about the same as it did in 2023 or something. Because we're just going to be replacing the docks and doing a little bit of work on what we call the uplands, which is like the Nickoloff street side stuff and parking. So we're not expanding it. We're not moving any break wall. We're not dredging. We're not doing any of that stuff. It's going to be an in-kind replacement with a few upgrades to the civil engineering side, which is the land side. So we've got marine engineering and a little bit of civil. And as I go, please ask questions. Like, don't wait till the end if you can, but you can also just ask away. Happy to answer any questions. So, okay, well, that didn't translate. So timeline, design, finance, permitting, schedule. They really know the audience, of course. Like, what are you guys mostly interested in? Is this a science thing? You guys want to talk about environmental permitting? Or are you a bunch of finance folks want to talk about money? Whatever, ask whatever you want. Any one of these topics you could probably spend an hour on. Especially the permitting, because that is brutal. I'll tell you right now, it's brutal. But we're making a lot of great progress on it, so that's good. So anyways, get into the timeline. Next slide, yeah. Easier. I'll just say next slide. So Cordova South Harbor, the westward expansion began in about 1979. The planning, I think 83, it was finally completed. I've become a bit of an archaeological expert on the South Harbor and westward expansion. And its layout from then is unchanged with the exception of the float plane dock. That was never in the original plan, but it came mid-80s from what I gather. And it's there now. It doesn't really work. It's going to get replaced by a drive-down float. So again, you're really not going to notice that much of a difference because all the features are going to be about the same, but the functionality will change a little bit. So rehab plans have been in place for the last 5 to 10 years, but it wasn't until the last 2 or 3 years that they really started to gain traction and really put some effort, they being the city, into designing a new harbor. And then once we got a raised grant from the Department of Transportation, Maritime Administration for $20 million, that was like the kickoff. Like, okay, we got 20 million bucks. We think it's going to cost about 29 million. Let's get the rest of the money. That changed really quick, so as we all know. The current South Harbor has exceeded its design service life, which I believe was right around 35 or 40 years. So it's passed it by about a decade or so. And I think anyone who has been to the South Harbor knows that it needs some TLC. And it's beyond rehabbing it. You can't just replace a little of this, a little of that. Like, it's all got to go. So there's some environmental issues with it. It's got creosote pile in there. That's no good. It leaches all kinds of toxins, and we want those out. One of the grant vehicles we got was specifically a clean water loan to replace those. So all the different pots of money have little different areas where you can spend it, which makes budgeting wonderful and complicated. So it's just old. It's tired. It's breaking apart. It's dropping foam and plastics and all that stuff in there. So we got to get it out and build a new harbor. Like I said, the new harbor layout will be very similar. Again, casual observer, you're really not going to know, other than everything's going to be straight and plumbed and level and clean and nice, and it'll function quite a bit better. Project began, like I said, with the MARA DOT raise grant in 2021. That was $20 million that kicked it off. Project is scheduled to begin on, well, this Monday, and conclude with full capability mid-June of 2024. So when I say full capability, mid-June, it'll be, you can pull your boat up, you can hook power into it, you can get potable water. However, we anticipate it being open before the spring fishing season. So we're looking at like a mid-April, tie your boats up, as long as everything's structurally sound and all that good stuff, you'll be able to tie boats up in there. So that's really what most people care about is like, can we fish in the spring? And that brings us to our overall schedule, which is very compressed. It's a very aggressive schedule because we had to end it when fishing ended, or start it when fishing ended, and end it when fishing started. And we all know that, you know, doing anything in the winter here is challenging. You know, you got wind, rain, snow, short days, and a long logistics train, which we're at the very end of, so it's very challenging. So that's part of what makes this a very exciting project, but, you know, a lot of challenges. And Alaska's weather votes first, last, and loudest. So,
Collin, can I?
yes, please do, please.
So the fishing aspect, I know you are trying your best to do it. There's obviously lots of limitations.
Yeah.
We have contingents. I mean, we are a commercial fishing town, and if that harbor is not operational by May 1st or, you know, whatever, and we don't have contingency, we lose a multi-million-dollar fishery because of it.
Sure, that's a fair question.
Hopefully.
Contingency would be prioritizing.
Outside,
Yeah.
rafting up. I mean, there's lots of
Yeah,
thoughts.
and there's really a lot of challenges. Like, what do? You
Right.
know? And so that's really why we're looking at if it floats, it's sound, it's together, the engineers sign off on it, we tie boats up to it. So I can't give you any guarantees that everything's going to be perfect. We're doing the best we can with a very short. What it can't do is bleed. We couldn't do this piecemeal, and a lot of times we get asked, like, why don't we do this one float, two floats at a time over the next 5 years? Well, you can't because the mobilization costs would make this budget balloon to maybe double what it is right now because it costs millions of dollars to put heavy equipment and people in, and the start-stop just can't happen. So it's like you guys have 9 months to just jam all this work in. And in optimal conditions, that would probably be more than enough. If this was somewhere else where we didn't have the weather and the logistical issues, it'd be very doable. It's about as close as you can cut it for us to get it done. So the contingencies we talk about are, well, who's got to go into the harbor? So just say hypothetically, half the harbor was open. Well, we kind of have to look at like, who's fishing? Well, the people that are making a living off their boats, they're going to get the priority to get back into slips so they can work. And, you know, people with a sport boat or something that isn't their livelihood, you're going to have to wait. So that's the kind of stuff that we're going to do. Just like when we pulled folks out and tried to find space for people, it was like, if you're working through the winter and you need your boat, or you live here and your boat is your primary residence or your houseboat or whatever the case is, you get priority because that's about the best way we can figure out how to make it work. So does that answer your question, kind of? And we're just gonna have to trade and be flexible.
Communication with us,
Yeah.
the fishermen is important. And there's, you know, I'm a bow picker. I could be launched by a crane every day and go to work if that comes to that, or I could sit on a mooring buoy, but the copper star or tender that I deliver to can't operate at that. It's gonna be launched and working.
Yeah. That's a good question. But
hopefully
there's, you know, assuming we have floats in the water that work, we should be able to accommodate quite a few boats. And again, you know, 510 something floats in the South Harbor and 200 and something in the North Harbor. To get everybody out of the South Harbor to get this done, you got to, you know, take all those boats and put them somewhere, and you don't have enough room to put them in just in the North Harbor. So that's why we're pulling so many boats out. We're asking folks that have trailerable boats, please pull your boats out on your trailers. In a lot of places in Alaska, when they do something like this, they have 5 basins. You know, Sitka's got 5 basins. They just scatter them throughout the other 4, and they can do whatever they want. We don't have that luxury. So, or they're just so small where they can make it work. We're just trying to put a lot in a very small place. So, you know, it's challenging. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm wondering if this was going to actually be legible at all, but this is the new harbor. This is the layout. Again, this is the South Harbor westward expansion on sort of the west up view. So again, that's all nickel off on the left there, and these are all the floats, how it's going to lay out. This down here is the drive down dock. where the seaplane float currently is, and that'll be an 80 by 80 dock fixed in place with 4 piles, and you'll be able to drive trucks down there, one-way traffic, be able to drive down, it's floating, so there won't, it'll rise and lower with the tide, so you won't have a draft issue. You'll be able to pull boats up alongside, and you'll be able to reserve time, space on it, a couple hours here if you need to do some repairs or something like that, or do, quick load, offload, onload sort of thing. You'll be able to drive a truck out of there, which is great. There's other harbors that have them, and they love them, so we're real happy to have that on there. I know there's been some discussions about we need the seaplane float. Well, it just didn't make it into the cut of what we want, what we can afford, what we have space for, because a lot of this is to get the grant money, is you have to say, where's the money for it? What are you going to provide? And the seaplane float just didn't make it into the cut because we couldn't reduce capacity for boats. It was very critical that we did not reduce capacity. So we had to essentially hold what we had, change it up a little bit. Now we've got a better mix of floats that match the fleet we have, and assuming the future fleet, some bigger slots, some smaller, but it's a better overall mix. We don't have as many because right now we've got too many small docks and not enough medium-sized one. Now we've got the bulk of them are like the medium-sized one, fit bow pickers and things in the 30 to 40 foot range. So it's a better overall layout. The piles are all steel, no more foam in any of the floats. It's mostly timber, and this new layout will give us a 50-year service life. Now, will all of it last 50 years? Certainly things will need to be maintained, electrical, potable water, all that stuff. That takes constant maintenance, but the idea is that we're getting a 50-year harbor, so that's a very good thing. The parking on Nikolaus, it's about the same. Vehicles are gonna pull in right here, but the difference is we're gonna have more space behind what would be like a full-size long bed truck, so that they're not backing out and immediately on the street. They can back out, have a little bit of leeway, and be able to look out and see traffic, so it's safer. That was a big thing for this grant, is it's safer, it's cleaner, it's more functional, it's ADA compliant. So all these gangways here, here, and here, they're all ADA compliant, because now, at low tide, it's you could like rappel down. So all these gangways will be much better, much safer, much more accessible, and we also have ADA compliant berths throughout too. So that's one of the things you have to do. It's like building a house; you have to get it up to modern code. So that's what this is. Yes.
Is the drive down float, is that going to be first come first serve, or is that going to be, how's the reservation system?
It depends on how long you need it. So really, it's if you're like, hey, I got to get somebody down to do some welding, or I got to do something big. You call Harbor Master and say, okay, I need it for 4 hours or something like that, and they do their best to manage that.
Okay.
Yes.
I was looking at what's the length on the drive down ramp?
What's the what?
The length of the ramp, because I was looking at that the other day on the schematics.
It's 100 feet.
It's about 100 feet, yeah. It's about 100 feet long, yeah. And it's got enough to bring like a box truck down it.
And that work at any tide.
At any time.
Okay.
At any time.
It's only two gangways?
Yeah.
What?
L float no longer connects, huh?
Mm-hmm.
No, I hate that. That's kind of silly.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Well, why did you reduce the gangway?
Cost. It's all cost. Those things the gangways are like very, very expensive. And you also have to like maximize parking. You have to be able to expand parking. So this is the best considering our budget. Yes.
I know that originally we were going to try to do a seawall on that south side.
Yes.
Is that cut through what was L float? Was that to accommodate that? Is that to plan for future expansion if that was to become a thing in the future?
You could, but dredging is so expensive.
Yeah.
To go back and dredge that, I mean, it would have to be another massive windfall of money to put in. What was originally called the O float, we were going to have a seawall here, and what was called the O float, which was a bunch of transient berths for skiffs and things like that. It was going to run from here to here, but it's just simply too expensive. And most of that was not the docks. It was the dredging. And the other thing too, permitting, we'll get to that in a minute, is they found that the modeling they did, the Corps of Engineers does, wave modeling, and the waves that would hit it, the attenuation they call it, hits it, bounces back off, would be too much for the rest of the floats. It would magnify whatever wave or swell. I mean, it's hard to believe that there's any in there, but they're smart people. You know, they figured this out. And they said, you're really going to cause more problems than you're going to fix by putting a seawall, like a rigid steel seawall in there. So that got axed. Because again, our budget was $29 million to do everything. Float, seawall, dredge, all that stuff. Then it went to $39 million. And we had to start cutting. It didn't go to $39 million to get everything we wanted. It just went to $39 million for the basics. So that was a deep cut of what's going to work and what can we do. And things like multiple gangways. I don't know. You can't have it all.
Did you keep close track of how this budget creep happened? I mean, how did it go? How did you get a third again, $10 million again? How did it happen? I mean, you don't have to answer right now, but did you like kind of?
From the initial estimate on the original design was $29 million.
Right.
Inflation hit us, and when the
Inflation
contract
doesn't
came
go
up,
$10 million in just a few years.
But-
It's called a budget creep, and I'm just curious.
we cut back, and we still ended up at $39 million.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting topic to see how it happens. I'm gonna ask another question in a minute.
Sure.
You know,
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, it involves permitting, so it'd be good for you to make your presentation.
Oh, yeah, okay.
On permitting.
Next slide, please. Okay, key upgrades, better slip size, sewage pump out station, Ogden drive down float will have a sewage pump out station. We actually got a grant specifically for that. Didn't pay for all of it, but paid for maybe a third of it. So drive down float, seaplane dock, removal of the creosote, 3-phase electrical power, so it's better power, it's more stable, and our metering will be better. Better parking on Nikoloff, ADA compliant, and we'll have covered gangways, which is nice. Yeah.
So with a different mix of slip sizes, is there a plan to rehouse which boats are where? Because I see I am now in a large slip and I have a small boat.
Yeah. It's a good question for the harbor master. It's a good question for the harbor master. I don't know what the plans are for putting people back in. I suspect you'll be matched up with something that fits, that makes sense.
We've been told we're going back to the same number that we.
I don't know if the number is
Came out
going
at
to
that.
match. I don't know. I really don't know. For slip holders to get, G12 or whatever it is, or I-15 or something like that. I don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. Finance. This is the budget. It's a lot, but this is one. Contract total, 39, 596, 575. So drink it in. It's a lot of zeros. Costs a lot to build this thing. Here's our different clean water loan, like we talked about, creosote piles, raise grant, that's the lion's share. City of Cordova bond, harbor facility grant. It's a $5 million grant, but they take tax out to the tune of like $350,000, which is great. Harbor's paying for a lot right now. Pink salmon disaster money, legislative support, $3 million grant. That was like a last minute one, which is great. Cordova supplemental, that's what Cordova's kicking in addition to the bond and other monies. And then we just got a grant from the Denali Foundation for $750,000. And so there we are. Those are our numbers. We have some change orders to add some finger floats to the tune of $206,000. And we have another change order for $200,000 for electrical appliances. Questions on the budget?
The 14.5 million, does that include the harbor that's already been paid for, like the pieces of harbor, or what's all the expenses been?
Oh, that's all long lead items. So all the steel, all the stuff that you just can't, you got to order, 8 months, 10 months out. So that's really that 14,744. It's actually closer to 16 now. That's all long lead items, like the transformers.
Yeah.
Transformers are hard to get, and so they're expensive. But most of that's steel, and you got to pay for it to build it, and it's a lot of money. So most of the 20 million for the raise grant will go to construction costs, not to materials. I mean, it'll go to some materials, but we'll be using that for construction. Yes.
I think the CEC has expressed a desire to reuse their metering pedestals and all that equipment. Is there a cost savings factored into the budget with that, or is that?
No, the pedestals are expensive, and they're something that will be reused because you don't want to throw those out. You're like, just why? There's use for them. Whereas most of the floats, there's nothing left to be used on them. But those, yes, but there's no cost savings because they're not going to be reused on this project. CEC might get some, the city might get some, but it's just, we're just gonna be recycling.
They're not gonna go right back on the finger points.
No, no.
Gotcha.
Okay, next slide. Permitting. This could be an entire week-long discussion on federal permitting. So these are the different permits that we have, and you can see that top left one, the National Marine Fisheries Service Biological Opinions, Species Act, Section 7 consultation. That's the big hole in the tent. That one, everything sort of cascades down from that, or everything is shaded by that one, and we just got that one, so that's a very good thing. We've got, before, when I wrote this, we just had the DEC Section 401. That was the only one we had. Now we have this. And now we have this, and we're working on this. These two are really just, once this happens, those two happen. So we've got that, and then this one right down here, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Otter IHA, that's a standalone just for sea otters. One of the interesting things about it, if you ever dive into the stuff, they talk about taking of marine mammals, and like, you think take, like, are you like killing them or something like that? No, that's not the case. You're really just impacting their lives in the marine environment. And so you have to list a certain amount of take, an estimated amount of take, like how many marine mammals do you think you're going to impact for this project? So we're given a certain amount of take, and all that stuff was approved, with the exception of the otter one. It's not that big a deal, and we suspect we'll get it, pretty soon, but we can do construction without it. Just one of those things where you have what used to be called marine mammal observers, and now they're called protected species observers, and you have to have, for our project, I think it's 5 folks, 3 to 5 people, depending on what you're doing, just out looking, just hanging out, making sure that stuff doesn't get irritated. Yes?
How do you get that job?
You apply for it, and you have to have some sort of credential, be it experience or education or both. And so good point. We need people to do that. I know we have 2.
Who do you contact?
You contact Turnagain Marine, and you send your application to them, and then they send it to our environmental consultant, and then they send it to NOAA NIMS, and they say, okay, you're good to go. So, yeah. So tell your friends, if you're looking for a job, you want to stand around with a clipboard in the rain, that's your job. So, but it's necessary, got to have it. So used to just be like, hey, you're looking for these things, and you got a little field guide, and you just went out there and wrote down if you saw anything, and you called somebody and said, hey, I see an otter, and it's within 12 meters or 25, 50 feet or whatever of the construction site. Then you have to shut down while the otter does what the otter does, or the whale does what the whale does. And then once it's clear, you wait a little bit, they're gone, you can resume work. So the list of what the environmental compliance for marine mammals, it's pretty extensive on how you do things. You have to, they ask you to do like a cold start, like start your jackhammer for the pile driving, and you start it sort of slowly, and then you build into it, because just like the wave attenuation bouncing back, they do pretty extensive modeling. And I wish I had put that slide in there, but it's really interesting because they show, like, if you were to, have a pile driver operating at full capacity and it hits the pile in the harbor, it will send a sound wave through the water, and they model it, and it shows how it goes through the harbor, out the entrance, is deflected and sort of deadened by Spike Island, and then it comes up this way towards us. So it's really, really fascinating stuff. And so they know, like, they set these boundaries, like 100 yards, half mile, something like that. And they're pretty reasonable, but you got to have people there watching just to make sure. And it's, gray whales, orca, stellar sea lions. It's things that are protected or endangered. And so we've got all those, and except for the otters, but the otters are not endangered or threatened in Prince William Sound. There are other places, but not here. So anyway, so that's permitting. Again, we could go on and on. There's also some regulatory permits that have to do with the layout of the Corps of Engineers. The Corps of Engineers doesn't own the harbor, but they own a lot of it. They own all the breakwall They own the mudline, seafloor, and a few other things. So we have to make sure our permits are in line with what they do and their responsibilities, because they dredge the harbor periodically. I think it's every decade or something like that. They come in to do a bathymetric survey and dredge where they need to. So you have to make sure that that's in line with what they want. Any questions on permits? Yes.
Yeah, my question was, and this, kind of esoteric, I try to, make a real effort to keep track of this modern world we live in. And much of the big cities, the coastal cities especially, you simply have an incredible housing shortage. And, there's just a buttload of unhoused people, and then the people that actually have jobs or they can't afford to buy a house. In other words, these cities have shown themselves to be untenable devices, as it were, and untenable. And largely due to permitting. In other words, the permitting process just got to be so onerous that you simply cannot build. I mean, this is the truth right there. And this, it's kind of interesting to see how human fuck things up. But do you see it coming down to the same thing, that how long before you simply won't be able to build a harbor? Or we're there now. If you want to build a new harbor right out here in front, could you?
Money and time are no object, yes.
Money and time are no object, could you?
Yeah.
And permitting, how long would the permitting take?
It just depends on what are there eagle grass bed issues? Are there migratory bird issues? You move a mile up and down the coast and things change dramatically. It all depends.
Well, no, what I'm getting at is how long before the permitting process would simply make it impossible to build another dock?
I don't know.
One
One of the strengths of this project is that we're not expanding. If we were expanding, it'd be a whole other beast of challenges. Again, migratory bird issues. If we were to continue going south or west, there'd be tons of issues with that. But because we're keeping it inside the existing footprint, and it is an in-kind replacement, a lot of these permits, while required, they have to do their due diligence and check and make sure, okay, are you doing everything right? Are you going to do anything that's going to disturb it? And in the permitting process, they did discover that the wave action, the dredging, all that stuff is going to be problematic. Could we overcome that? Yeah, but that's where money comes in. You take like dredging. You know that the mud in the bottom of the harbor is going to be toxic. Just know, everywhere it's like that. Certainly we're no exception. So what do you do with all that stuff? So if you have the money to ship it out somewhere, sure, you can do it, but it's really expensive. So again, money and time are no object. You probably can do it, because then you can offset. There's mitigating strategies with a lot of these permits where they say, okay, if you're going to do this, you're going to take this much seafloor or whatever, you have to offset it by doing something elsewhere to mitigate your impact. So it's possible. I won't say every scenario, because I don't have that kind of knowledge. Wish I did. But yeah, you could do it. It just takes a lot of time. These permits take a ton of time. And it's just, and have they gotten to be more stringent? Yes, we have environmental consultants. That's all they do for us, is do this permitting stuff. And they say, yeah, every year it's harder and harder and harder. And one of the challenges, a lot of the agencies put more requirements on, but their staffing doesn't meet those requirements. So they say, you've got to do all these things, but their staffs haven't grown to manage all these things. So that's definitely something that has been a real challenge, and just trying to understand their world of work. We're like, we need the permits now. And they're like, we got to go through the steps, and it takes a long time. So it's not a perfect answer, but that's where we're at with it. Yes?
Do the environmental consultants have anything to say about the invertebrates that live in the harbor, like the sea stars? What's going to happen to them?
So the key to the permitting, keep this relative to our project, is it endangered? Is it threatened? If it's not, it just really doesn't rise to the level of needing a permit. It just doesn't. Like sunflower sea stars. That's something that is perhaps threatened. I think it's threatened in some places, not threatened here, or not listed yet. In the future, it might be, where these starfish, for lack of a better term, these sunflower sea stars, they might be an issue. And like we might be able to, or might not be able to do certain things because of their status, but they're not there yet. So invertebrates aren't an issue with ours, nor is eelgrass beds, nor are eelgrass beds. Like I said, we go on and on and on about this one. Yes?
I may have missed it. On each of the blocks, it says like 1 to 4 weeks, 1 to 2 days. Was that
1 to 2 days prior to start date, or was that like, we'll have this in 1 to 2 days?
This was, we made this a while back, so it's not the most accurate. Like I said, like 1 to 4 weeks, well, we just got these, so it's like this, I think when we put this together, it was like, well, we still have 1 to 4 weeks to get this stuff, so disregard the dates, so. Again, but this section 7 consultation, this is the big one, and we have it. It's biological opinion from Noah Nims that says, we think that what you're doing is, and what you're asking to take is righteous, and you guys can essentially do this. You're not asking for too much. Your take isn't going to be too impactful to the different species, and they allow it. And then from there, we get the different incidental harassment authorizations for whales, seals, otters, whatever the case is. And then from there, and it's all required under NEPA. And then NEPA, every federal agency has a NEPA requirement, or most do anyways. And MARAD has one as well. And again, because that's where they're 20 million. One of the conditions is they want to make sure they give you all this money. You don't go doing something that's really bad for the environment. Or it's not ADA compliant. You know, these are all the wickets that you have to clear to get the funding for it. And it's good, because without it, you know, you could be building stuff that's unsafe, that doesn't accommodate, you know, all people, or, you know, keeps certain people out. You know, if it was just 80-foot slips and nothing but 80-foot slips, well, what does that do for the rest of the fleet? You know, that sort of thing. So they've got to go through with a fine-tooth comb and say, yes, this meets the elements of what you need and what we think you should have. And so, yeah, there's a lot to it. Permitting. Next slide, please. I knew this one wouldn't come out great. This is our overall timeline. It's a Gantt bar chart. It's pretty brutal, but it just talks about like all the different things we're doing: mobilization, demolition, bulkhead install. That's all the stuff. The civil engineering side of things on Nickoloff Way, float install, all the different floats, and the fixed dock installation. So it goes from, you know, mid-October all the way out into June timeframe. And this thing changes. I mean, this is like perfect world stuff, and you'll be behind on a bunch of things, and then you'll catch up and work ahead on some stuff. So this is a moving target, but this is our schedule. This is what we work by. So I wish it was a better slide.
So which,
Yes.
it looks, since your L is no longer connected, are you gonna do JK, or when you start laying things back in?
We're gonna start from, and I'll get to that in a minute, but for the project, so we do demolition, we start from the furthest westernmost float, and we're gonna work our way east. And G float is the last one to come out, because we need G float for staging. So all the barges tie up there and all that stuff. So we work from west to east. And then once we finally get G float out, then we can put the new G float in, and then we can put the drive down float in. And then that's when we're done.
Okay, so when you go to put that, you know, you'll still be, G float's the last to come out, so you'll be putting K and J back in and building back in the same way you demolish.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And so demolition, the way demolition will work is right now, we've had some contractor changes with demolition, but working through that stuff. It's all going to come, get pulled apart, and then it's going to get craned over Nickoloff to that lot on the south end where the memorial is and the start of the walking path on the break wall. That's going to be the staging area. Put all the floats in there, and then from there they'll get picked up, put on a truck, and trucked out to the landfill. So that's the plan. But then that's going to, obviously, that whole operation is just going to start creeping east as we start moving stuff down. And then at some point, we'll be occupying multiple lots. So that's a real challenge, because we have to keep Nickoloff Way clear for most of the winter, because we have all that upland civil engineering work to do. So it'll be busy down there for sure. Okay, excellent. Oh, geez, all right. So this is it. This is like part of what we've got. This is where our 15 million bucks resides, and a bunch of new docks and floats and fingers and things like that. That's all down in Anacortes, Washington. Transpac Marine built those for us. I think they're the biggest West Coast harbor marina builder.
Anacortes?
Anacortes.
Where, you know what?
Anacortes. Yeah. Transpac Marine builds these, and so That brings up a good point. Somebody asked about environmental consultants. We have a really good team of folks that are doing this. So Turnagain Marine is our primary. They're out of Anchorage. And we've got some consultants with Solstice. They're out of Anchorage as well. R&M Engineering, they're out of Anchorage, and they just are doing a fantastic job for us, making sure everything's right and we're moving along. And they've got a ton of experience building in Alaska. It seems like between the three of them, they've touched like every coastal community with the project. So Turnagain's working in Whittier, the Valdez, Sitka, Hoona, you name it. So lots of experience on this project, and so we're real excited about it. So that's where we're at. Yes?
Is there gonna be power pedestals anywhere on the transit boats?
On the transit loads?
Yeah, for those to plug in.
What do you mean transit loads?
G?
Transient?
Transient.
Oh, yeah, it'll be powered, yeah. It just depends. There will be power pedestals along the east side of G throughout, but on the slip side, there will be power. So we'll have more power, we'll have better power, better being more stable. So it'll be three-phase, so it'll be stronger power all the way out to the end, along with water as well. So potable water, just like we had before, but we should have, better systems and better head pressure so that more people can use it all the way out to the end of the floats. Fixed, firefighting systems will still be portable. We're not gonna have an installed system. That was a few $1 million when we were talking about what we had to cut. That was one of the things. We couldn't have an installed firefighting system, which would have been great, but it's going to be portable, just like it is right now. And that seems to work just fine. Yes?
So I might have missed it. Is it just a 1-for-1, like not a slips?
No, we've got a few more. We added a few more at the end, the last few bits.
Length of those, it's the same number of big boat slips?
No, it's a different mix. And if we go back, I can tell you exactly what's what. It's a better mix because what we found over the last 40 years is that it changes, right? Boats get bigger. They typically don't get smaller. But. So if you look here, I don't know if I can read that.
It's like too good to be true.
So, yeah, I can, you know what? I've got my notes here. I think I can read my own.
Well, there's gonna be more slips because how many picker boards are missing right now? Right?
Touche, good point, yes, right. Yes, as far as like the here and now, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
It's gonna be better.
Yes, it will be better. Yes, it will. Good point. Geez, I'm sorry, I can't even read this without my glasses. So it's a better mix and it matches what we need now. Because again, this was designed, South Harbor, the westward expansion was designed in the late 70s. And so things have changed. Boats got bigger.
Now, regarding this three-phase power you guys have now, where all is this gonna go?
Into the slips.
Well, I mean, where? I mean, all the slips?
There'll be one just like it is now. So you'll have like one pedestal, and so two boats can hook up to it.
Okay, and then every pedestal in the harbor will have three-phase?
No. Most will have three-phase.
Most will have
Most will have three-phase.
a lot more, like now, like none have
No,
three-phase.
that's, yeah. it'll be
I'm an
better.
electrician.
Yeah.
I wired
well,
that shit down there, it's down there.
Yeah, I'm not an electrician.
Oh, okay, no, that was my question is,
Yeah,
so practically every pedestal is gonna have three-phase?
I don't know about everyone, but a lot of them, it's better power. So, and that was a big part of it, just making it better. Like, what do we need? We need power, we need, reliable power and metering too. So we changed all the metering so that it's a better metering system so the CEC can monitor remotely, turn it on, turn it off, switch users and all that stuff. So it's a big improvement. So everything in here, it'll look the same, it'll look very similar, but it's gonna be better.
No, having every three-phase everywhere.
Yeah, it's not everywhere, but we'll have three-phase power, especially where we need it. But again, I'm not an electrician, so. I think that's about it. Now it's question time. More questions, yes?
I'm sure there's a common sense answer to this, but why are the, on H&I floats, why are the floats directly across from each other rather than herringbone? To make it a little easier when they're coming in. Into your slip on the east side.
Space. It's all space, what we have, because once we changed the makeup of how long these finger floats are, we had to change the orientation.
Right.
So it was a
But
lot
see,
of time
like six
talking about
of
these.
one or half dozen of the other, though, if you just move the piles over and flip them, it seems like in my mind we'd have the same number of floats.
Yeah, it's all like space. So the engineers do their turn radius on there and how much space you have to move into these things. And this was the most optimal use of the space we had.
Okay. This seems easier to come into your slip when you don't have to go around the.
Oh, right. There's a wind on it or something like that. But when you come out, is it easier the other way?
Well,
So.
So it's easier to pull out.
It's a little easier backing out than getting in sometimes. It just depends,
Yeah.
But
This was
So who do you work for?
the city.
So you're actually employed by the city rather than on the contract?
Yeah, I went with the contract.
but I think this is.
Yeah, next question. Another question? Yes.
Mine goes back to John's contingency thinking. It seems like the overall plan, I think you've got like you said, if it works perfectly, it's gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like rebuilding from K back to G, I think thinking about what our needs are gonna be in May, I hadn't really put together thinking about the tenders. And, I was, if K's back together, we can put 50 bow pickers back over there. But thinking about that contingency of getting the tenders back in the water to be able to get the fish to town and all that. So I don't know, something similar. I think it's your job, obviously, as the project progresses, to see how it's going, and you're gonna have a better idea in January how serious you need to be about contingency. But something similar to what we're doing in the other harbor now, with taking fingers out for boats to tie up sideways. Could be something to consider even with these new docks. Don't build all H float. Leave some spots there for.
Yeah, you have to get creative.
Right.
Yeah.
So I hope everything goes really well and we get on schedule, but it's, I think it's gonna be, I think that's what's on most people's minds. It's like, and it's fine. If it takes longer, we know we need a new harbor.
Well, the nice thing is like what you're talking about, the finger floats, because that was pulling the finger floats on A and B on the north side. That was like late August, early September audible. Like, how do we get more space? Like, we got to pull these off, and so that's worked out pretty well for us because we just started moving them this past week. So it's one of those things where the full length dock is going in first. Finger floats will go in second. They don't pull it all in at once. So that's the kind of stuff we have the flexibility on to do those things. And like I said, Turnigan, they've been great with us and like whatever we need and like time, but they need time as well. So it's
I think that's the biggest thing is bringing the contractor in on the strategic goals of the project, which are have a new harbor, keep a functioning fishing fleet.
They're well versed in understanding those changes in demands and needs, and they're very accommodating with us. So it's not like this is just how it's going to be. We can't take too much time because they've got other projects and delays are money, but at the same time, like so far, very good relationship. I don't see that changing. So they're flexible. So that's,
I got a question kind of along that line. You said it has to, obviously makes sense. Has to be inspected, get the final and blessed before we can use. But hopefully that can be done in stages, like he's describing. If it's still J, the farthest one of the breakwater. If that's done at X date, like we want to move back in.
For sure.
And utilize. It's not like all done, you can't get anything.
No, absolutely. Those are conversations that we've had. Like, as soon as we can start moving boats in, we start moving boats in.
As soon as this 100 foot's done.
Because a lot of the work that once the dock's in, once all the finger floats are in, you can do a lot of the electrical and a lot of the plumbing around it, because everything's on that main gangway. They're not on the finger floats. The power doesn't run out to the end. The water doesn't run out to the end. They just need access. And so, might have to step around people working, but those conversations have already been had, like, hey, as soon as we can start pulling boats out, because what we don't want is, April 15, we got to move every single boat out of the shipyard and every single boat out of North Harbor. We know that that's not a good solution either. So, and they know that. And they're like, yeah, if it's good and everything, meets all the sign-offs and all that stuff, we'll start moving boats back as soon as we can.
And as soon as we start moving back, it begins to free up the old harbor.
Yes.
The new old harbor.
Yeah, because it's gonna,
To squeeze in there
jammed
to
up.
make space.
Yep, absolutely. Again, when you go from, 700 and something slips down to 200, it ain't pretty. You gotta get creative. So that's, if you're flexible and creative, you can make stuff happen.
You still won't have road access back there though, right?
Depends. We don't know. It depends.
It may not be parking.
It may not be parking. Maybe parking somewhere else, So we'll have the civil stuff going concurrent with the floating stuff.
Yeah.
So, wish I was clairvoyant. I can tell you how this is all gonna play out, but it's all gonna happen at the same time, so.
I'm just more concerned walking around civil work than dock work.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be, K barriers or Jersey barriers and flags and tape and all that good stuff, keeping people out of there, so.
Where does the drive down dock fit in that? Is that gonna be after G, kind of in that?
Yeah, because we need G to be in place. It'd probably be about the same time, but, considering you only have so many people and so many hours in a day, the drive down will probably be one of the last features to be put in.
Are the gateways covered like from the outside?
Yes. Yeah.
How about the 3-stage and the normal boat ramps? Are those utilized for construction, or is there consideration that those are important working zones for us,
The 3-stage, oh, no, those are all,
the 3-stage,
the old ferry dock.
No.
Those aren't being,
No, the boat ramps.
the boat ramp.
The dry dock and the boat ramp.
The
with
boat
crane.
ramps.
Bottom left corner.
the 3-stage is the old ferry dock
No.
in the 60s. And no, it was in the 1960s, that's why it was there for the ferry dock. Like I said, I went deep on the archaeology of this project.
You're right, they're wrong.
Yeah, that was the old ferry dock, so, touche. Really deep. No, we're not putting anything in there. We can't, because we know you need the ramp all year, and you need the 3-stage, the old ferry dock. You need those things, so we're not gonna pile stuff up and.
Y'all's working zone is the corner of.
So it really shouldn't stretch past the grid.
Okay.
So, yeah, it will because we have parking that goes past there, but it's not gonna interfere with the ramp, it's not gonna interfere with the 3-stage. So that was all part of it, like, we thought, oh, can we do demo? Well, we can't even really pile the stuff up on the 3-stage dock because it's too heavy and we don't wanna mess that up and people use it, we can't take everything. So it's just the South Harbor. Yes?
I'm guessing this is just a harbor master question. When are they gonna assign people slips? I mean, they already have what we're build.
Somebody asked that. I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know if the numbering, the numbering will be the same.
Write people's name on that. So
Yeah.
People stop worrying. Because I think that's where everyone's worried they're gonna end up with a big boat and a little slip. But.
Yeah, that's part of the discussions, that we don't do that everything matches up. But, it's like over time you get the horse trade and take my slip, I'm there and you're there. That's a harbor master question, but the idea is that because we're changing the makeup of the size of slips, it'll better match so that we can better match up the boats that we know we have. And so, yeah. But I don't have that information. Other questions?
Oh, yeah, I know that. Let's have it.
Want to talk about permitting? No?
I think that would help happen. Stuff.
Have you heard, is it just, we're going back into the same number that we came out of?
I'm in the old harbor, so it doesn't matter.
John doesn't care, but I think.
I'm in the new old harbor.
Yeah, John doesn't care. Why are you asking so many questions, John? Yes.
On separating high flow instead of having.
I bet there's.
Money.
Money.
Money. You can't do it all. You can't, we just can't have everything.
So it was cheaper to put a break in there.
Well, also too, because we wanted to be able to get boats down through here and down to here. So there's only so much space you have and so much money, so it's just,
I'm wondering
one of those
how
things.
We think they're gonna be utilized fine, because we've got slips there under the ramps and along the parking lot, so why do we think they'll be used in the future?
You're saying that these aren't being used right now? Well, that's a draft issue to get underneath, to get to them. because of the gangways, you know, at the tide. So now we won't have that problem because you can drive all the way down here and, you know, run east or run west and get to these spots. And you don't have the issue of going underneath here because you really won't be able to go this way anymore because you've got this gangway, you've got this ramp. So this way, I mean, it's still shallow there for sure, but you'll be able to access it, get in and out without waiting for an optimal tide. And again, you wouldn't be able to get under here unless you're in like a rowboat or something. So, and then the same with going around this way.
So there's gonna be like, 30-foot?
Yes, yes,
Roughly?
yeah, 30 footers.
Is there 20 right now, I think?
I don't know what they are, they're small, but it's the same idea, but now you can actually use them. You really can't use them, you know, or you plan your voyage around, well, the tide is this, and I can't get out or I can't come home, sort of thing. So now they'll be fully functional slips.
Is there any dredging that corresponds with the build, or is that just?
No, no dredging.
That's all?
Nothing above, no, I'm sorry, nothing below mean high tide. And that goes back to, yeah, 404, Section 10, Clean Water Act, dredging. We still have to get those permits for pile driving, but it was a big issue for us is to not dredge because one, the permitting gets more complex, and two, the cost to deal with dredge gets more complex, and then you're gonna put in a sheet pile wall that gets very, very expensive, and then the sheet pile wall will make the waves worse.
How are you putting in, you are putting in a sheet pile wall?
No,
There isn't?
no. It's the new parking will be cantilevered out over, so the riprap and the rocks and all that stuff will be just about the same and won't be disturbing what's called the silt barrier, and that's like the mud line.
That's so cool, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be we'll get the same bang for our buck without building the sheet pile wall. Yes.
So when is the Corps scheduled to dredge next, and are they gonna focus on, areas closer to shore, or is it gonna go over?
I don't know. The Corps' comings and goings are not like, that's just, I think they were here and last time they dredged was 12, from what I know. Just anecdotally, the North Harbor and the idea for there would require a lot of dredging. And most of that work is not on floats. Most of that work is in the high tide line and the seabed. So it's, you know, building a new waterfront, a new wharf, and dredging and making room for a fuel dock and a few other things. But that's all in infancy of planning stages right now. Yes?
On the drive down dock, what does that look like if you're gonna kind of look at it going down? It's 4 big pilings? Is there power down there?
Power, yeah. Everything to do like good work with water, there's power, there's
not
sewage pump out.
There's not a crane right now.
There's a crane.
There is a crane.
There will be a crane.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like how big of a crane?
I want to say 5,000, but don't quote me on that. It's the
Bigger than the ones we have in the harbor.
Yeah, so we're rebuilding the one on the 3 stage, and we're putting a new crane on the drive down.
Cool.
Yeah. So it'll be like wildly functional. Yeah, get ready. It's gonna be good. Yes.
Is that gap changed at all between new and old, or north and south?
It's about 12, moving it, G-flow, about 12, 13 feet to the west. So it'll be moved this way.
Oh, it'll be bigger.
Yeah, the channel will be wider.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we have more slips. Yeah. You're magic.
Yeah. And like you'll be able to walk straight. You won't have to like offset the creek and yeah, we'll be good. Yeah, I'm really excited. You guys should be too, I think. You know, it's a good thing. It's necessary. It's very much needed. It'd be great if we could have everything we want, but you know, budgets, you know. So, and then the one thing I guess I would ask is that as this goes on, just, you know, we do our best to communicate this stuff, and it's fluid, and the changes are numerous, and we do our best to communicate when we know, and not to be, you know, run things right up to the deadline, but it's just the best we can do sometimes when things change for us. So, you know, Facebook, we always advertise on Facebook what we're doing, the city website, we do our best, call the harbor master. You can call me, first slide has my email address and phone number and on the City of Cordova website. just ask. It's no big deal to ask, like, hey, what's going on with this? Yeah, here's my email address. So happy to talk about it. We do our best to communicate. Trust me, we're not trying to like just cook this up in my office. I swear. I know it probably seems like that, but it's not what we're doing. But we're on a good path. Stuff takes time. We'll do our best. So that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Collin.
Christina, put the map back.
Map back up?
For those of us that need glasses to look at things.
Thanks for coming.
Christina, would you like